Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to our first Yankee Air Museum Historic Presentation Night of the year. We don't have one in January, and as you can see by the lack of carpet, we had an issue for February. The February program is going to be rescheduled for, I believe it's October or November, but we'll keep you apprised of that. I'm Jeff Bush. As always, I never change my name, but I'm your host for the evening. I want to welcome everyone aboard tonight. For those in attendance who are not Yankee members, this event is free for members and just one of the many benefits that you get as a Yankee member. But even though it is free to get in, we do ask for donations from the members to assist us in bringing these great programs. We've got no table with no box. Okay.
It's right over the hall.
Well, that one's always there anyway. Oh, all the way in the back. There it is. Okay. So we do have some donation boxes. If members on the way out, if you could each drop a $5 bill, that would help us to continue to bring these great programs to you every month. As far as upcoming events, we're going to have our annual Wings and Wheels. We'll be in June 9th and 10th, and that's going to be at the what they refer to as the Rack, which for those of you who know me and we know something else what the Rack is. It has nothing to do with the Roush Aeronautics Center. But anyway, it's the Romulus Athletic Center, so it does get confusing for some of us. But this year we have shut down operations on the west side of the airport. So Wings and Wheels will be at the Roush Aeronautics Center, June 9th and 10th. We're going to combine this with our I believe it's 5th annual Bombers Berries and Brews fundraiser on June 10th. That will start at 2 p.m. June 24th, we'll see a return of our ever popular cold storage tour of the Cold War aircraft. Plus this year is our 25th annual Thunder Over Michigan. That's going to be August 12th and 13th. But as always, you can check our website, www.yankeeairmuseum.org, for any updated events that you may be interested in seeing. And now I'd like to ask you to turn all your cell phones to stun. And tonight you are encouraged to ask questions throughout the presentation rather than saving them to the end.
We will ask for each question.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
I
Later,
stand.
afterwards, if there's other questions, we will take those as well.
Sorry, Mom.
To know how this works.
Catherine has spoken.
Yes, I have.
I missed that part in the script again. We have a very special program tonight. Personally, I think our guests will ultimately go far in this world. I'm even thinking that it might lead to a great career path for myself at some point. Welcome to this day in 1925. We have some special guests with us today. Orville Wright, who with his brother Wilbur made the first ever powered flights by man. With him is his sister Catherine, who was very instrumental in promoting their aircraft throughout the world. Orville's not here yet for some reason. Hopefully Furries may have had some headwinds or something, not sure. So please,
As usual.
let's welcome Catherine.
Thank you. Turn this on for me. These new gadgets I don't know how to deal with.
Testing, testing.
Okay.
It's so nice of you to come here tonight. My brother Orville and I were very pleased to receive your invitation, and it's a lovely night in 1925. Now, as you know, Orville is running a bit late. He's flying in with a friend, and due to some headwinds, yes, there's headwinds. They're arriving a little late, but he should be. All right, there he is. That's so nice of you to join us finally.
Good evening. I'm sorry I'm late. I got a ride from a friend in an open cockpit aircraft, and we hit some headwinds, and we're a little late. Landing was a little bumpy too. They hadn't mowed the grass for a while, but as you can see, I'm here safe and happy to be with you. I'm assuming that Catherine was introducing us, and she does such a good job, I'm just going to let her continue. Catherine?
Well, we don't have any speeches, but we understand that you have some questions for us. And we like to do things in an orderly manner, so we've asked that the questions be numbered and we can answer them in order. I think that's all the instructions. When your question, when we ask for your question, it would be nice if you perhaps, if you're able to and want to stand up, give us your first name and tell us to whom you're asking the question, and then ask the question and we will answer it. So we will start at the beginning. Who has question number 1? Yes, in the back row. What is your name?
My name is Mary.
Mary?
My question is to Mr. Wright. How did you get interested in flight?
Oh, Mary wants to know how you got interested in flight.
Well, Mary, the way we got interested in flight was that our father, Milton, brought Wilbur and I a toy airplane from a trip to France, and it was powered by rubber bands, and we just had a lot of fun with that. And we got dreaming about, maybe man could build a plane that he could fly in, not powered by rubber bands, but powered by an engine. And we never lost that dream, Mary. I kind of continued my interest in flight. When I was 10 years old, I built a kite. Flew pretty well, so I built a few more and sold them to my friends. Now, Wilbur and I, we got our mechanical ability from our mother, Susan. We also got our shyness. It may not seem like it, but it's harder than you think for me to speak in front of groups like this, because both Wilbur and I got our shyness from our mother, Susan, but I'm getting better at it. Well, Wilbur and I like to bicycle, and so we opened a bicycle repair shop called the Wright Cycle Exchange in Dayton, Ohio. And then we started building our own bicycles, Mary. And so we call it the Wright Cycle Company. And we did pretty well. Well, we continued our interest in flying as a hobby, Mary, mostly. We bought some books from the Smithsonian Institute, one by Octave Chanute, the glider expert, another by Samuel Langley, the director of the Institute. And we started building gliders to kind of test out some of our own ideas about flight. And Mary, as they say, the rest is history. So that's how we got started. Who has question number 2? And who is it for?
Hi, my name is Linda.
Linda?
This question is for Catherine.
Or Catherine?
Would you please tell us about your childhood years?
Oh, Linda wants to know about my childhood years. Well, Linda, I will start at the very beginning. I was born in the upstairs bedroom of our Dayton, Ohio home, born on August 19th in 1784. Just happened to be Orville's 3rd birthday. I was a very nice birthday present for him. Wasn't I, Orv? Yes, well, Wilbur was 7 and 2 older brothers, 12 and 13. Wilbur, Orville, and I, being the youngest, have always been very close. Now, Wilbur used to say quite often that to succeed in life, you need to first pick a good mother and father, and then begin your life in Ohio. Now, yes, I know you're going to say something, yes, but I sort of agree with him, because I can't imagine another family having a better household family to grow up in. So to us, Ohio was very exciting. So I hope that answers your question, Linda. And that was number 2. Who has number 3?
Me.
Me?
My name is Connor.
Your name? I'm sorry, honey. What is your name?
My name is Connor,
Connor.
and this question is for Mr. Wright.
Okay.
So how did you come to build your first plane? I mean airplane.
Connor, thank you. Glad to see a young man here getting some history. That's great. Connor, the way we built our first plane, Connor, was really a glider. It really wasn't an airplane, but it was very important in the evolution. We built a biplane glider in Dayton, and we had it broken down, transported out to a place called Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, and a place near there called Kill Devil Hill. We picked that area, Connor, because the winds, prevailing winds from the Atlantic would help us get a better lift to take off. And also there were sand dunes there, and so if we crashed, it wasn't quite so bad. So we, the locals were wondering what we were doing with this huge glider that we could glide in, the biplane. And we told them, we said, you know, eventually we want to build an airplane that man can fly in under power. Well, they were very skeptical. And in fact, one of them wrote something about his skepticism in a local newspaper, Connor, and I almost remember verbatim. He said, we believe in a good God, a bad devil, and a hot hell. And we believe that that same God never intended that man should fly. So, well, Connor, in spite of the skepticism, we kept at it. And we developed what was called wing warping. We found that if we tied cords on the edge of the wings on a glider and pulled on them, we could change the shape of the wing enough so we could turn a glider, which had never been done. So, Connor, that was really our first airplane. It was a biplane man glider that we could turn with our wing warper.
Well, I'm glad that you kept at it because perseverance is really a good trait to have.
Wonderful! Yes, sir! Wow. So, you're an impressive young man, and you keep your perseverance going. Maybe someday you'll be up here talking to people about some of your exploits.
Orville, I'd like to add a little bit to Linda's question.
I want to tell you a little bit about our family. Milton was, our father, Milton, was a bishop in the church, and he was strict and demanding, but also encouraged us to learn and explore new ideas. Our mother, Susan, was shy and gentle, as Orville mentioned. She was amazing. She could build anything and build it well, and she never discarded anything that Wilbur and Orville made. Sadly, Mother died of tuberculosis after being ill for several years. Being the only girl in the family, I became the family hostess, even though I was only 14 years old. I began running the household, cooking and cleaning. I handled family correspondence and accounts and worked as father's secretary as well. So I think they're a very important part of my childhood, and I wanted to mention that to you. Who has question number four?
Here?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am, my name is Franco.
Franco?
Yes, ma'am, I'm from Hamtramck, but I love Columbus, Ohio.
Okay. Do you have a question for one of us?
Catherine, we understand that you attended college.
Oh, yes.
Will you please tell us about that?
Okay, yes, you understood correctly. My father felt I needed a college education in order to be independent and be able to support myself. Now, in those days, not many females were allowed into colleges, and there was very few careers available to us. Now, he picked Oberlin College in North Ohio near Cleveland. It was one of the first colleges to admit female students and was the oldest co-educational institute in America at that time. Now, the school was strict. Everyone that was at the college had to rise at 6 a.m. in the morning and lights out at 10 p.m. at night. And tobacco and alcohol were strictly forbidden. Now, having grown up in a household of all men, it was a bit of a change for me to suddenly be in a boarding house with all females. But I soon became very close friends with all of these wonderful ladies, and we had fun planning parties and picnics and going on bicycle rides, my favorite, and also camping trips. Now, I began my career in teaching to be a teacher of classic languages. I excelled in all my classes, well, all except for math. But there was a gentleman, Harry Haskell, that took his meals at our boarding house, and he volunteered to tutor me in math 3 times a week. He was very, very nice. We became very close friends, and he invited, he proposed to one of my best friends. Now, I also received a proposal and became engaged to Arthur Cunningham. But after 2 years, I broke that off. He seemed relieved. But I was sad for a while, but then I looked back at my breakup as my narrow escape. Now, it took me 4 years to graduate. I was the first one in our family, and only member in our family ever to receive a college degree. Now, it did take me 5 years because I took off a year in order to help nurse Orville back to health when he came sick with typhoid fever. Now, after graduation, I had a difficult time getting a job. Actually, it took me a year and a half before I was hired as a substitute teacher. My first full-time job was teaching a Latin class, a required Latin class, to some rather poor students who could be quite disruptive. However, growing up with, 4 older brothers, I knew exactly what to do to nip these teenage boys' behavior in the bud, and that's what I did. So that's a little bit about my college degree. I hope that answers your question, and that was number 4.
Next one is 5.
Oh, well, okay. Next one is 5.
We're very good at that.
No, not really. Yes, you have,
I'm Anita.
okay,
And
Anita.
Mr. Wright, when did you first fly under power?
Anita, is it?
Yes.
Anita wants to know when we first flew under power. Well, Anita, it was in December of 1903. And our bicycle mechanic, Charlie Taylor, built us a 12 horsepower engine that we could mount in our plane, which we called the Flyer. And again, we assembled it out in Kitty Hawk. And we had a ramp that ran down a sand dune. Anita, I'm sorry. And that was because it could help us pick up some speed. And one of us would have to run alongside and hold the wing. But the plane could slide down this ramp. So we flipped a coin, and Wilbur won. So he got on the plane, and the engine started up, and I held on to the wing while it went down the ramp, ran alongside, and let go, and everything worked. He flew, got airborne, and needed about 100 feet. Well, and crashed. Did a little damage, but we didn't consider that a successful flight. So we took a couple days, repaired it a little bit, and then it was my turn. So on December 17th, 1903, it was my turn. Went down the ramp, Wilbur held the wing, got airborne, 110 feet. Second trip, maybe 120 feet. Well, Anita, I had heard that sometimes, the third time is a charm. So on the third flight, I went 130 feet. But Anita, on the 4th try, I went 900 feet. Now that's the length of 3 football fields, and I flew for a full minute, and that we considered a successful flight. So history was made that day, the first time in the history of man ever that man had flown under power. Well, unfortunately, our plane, the Flyer, got knocked around by some high winds later that day and ruined. And so we shipped it back to Dayton, and we hope that someday it'll be in the Smithsonian Institute because of its historical significance. They haven't asked for it yet, but we're hoping. And because it is significant, again, the first time in the history of man that man flew under power. And I'm so glad that my brother Wilbur and I were able to do it, and that you're looking at the man who was able to accomplish that flight. So that's how we started with powered flight. That was number 5.
Number 6 is next.
Wonderful, wonderful. Your math is improving. Where's number 6? Your name?
Neil,
Neil, and who's yours for?
and my question's for Catherine.
Catherine?
Catherine, what did you think about your brother's interest in flying?
Oh, what did I think?
What did I think about their interest? Well, it was intriguing. I thought, it would be just a little hobby at first, but they soon became more set to work out something that could happen. But they did have a problem. They almost quit in the second summer of when they were in Kitty Hawk. Orville, do you remember the letter that you wrote me about the invasion of the mosquitoes? Yes, you do. I just so happen to have a copy of that letter. Okay, the sand and the grass and the trees and the hills and everything was fairly covered with them. They chewed us clear through our underwear and socks. Lumps became swelling up all over my body like hen eggs. We attempted to escape by going to bed, which we did a little bit after 5 o'clock. We wrapped up in our blankets with only our noses protruding from the folds, thus exposing the least possible surface to attack. The summer heat kept mounting, and our blankets became unbearable. The perspiration would roll off us in torrents. Misery, misery. We almost left for home, but finally the mosquitoes diminished. Later, the locals told us it happens about every 10 years. What is your name again?
Neil.
Neil, when they were in Kitty Hawk, I was home running and funding the households. I also watched over their bicycle shop. I would deposit receipts and make payments and fight with staff. The machinist, Charlie Taylor, and I were not very fond of each other. So anyway, I had to add that little bit. That was number 5, I believe, or 6. 6. Whoops, I'm losing my counts again. Who has number 7? Yes, and it's for...
Mary.
You're Mary, and it's for which one of us?
Mr. Wright, were there others who were experimenting with manned flight at the same time?
Mary, did you say?
Yeah.
Mary wants to know if there were others experimenting with manned flight at the same time. Yes, Mary, there were. Oh, you might want to know about one of them. I'm sorry, my sense of humor sometimes gets away from me. Well, the one that's, of course, most is Samuel Langley, the head of the Smithsonian Institute. He built a huge thing called the Aerodrome. It was a very large biplane. Same month that we were launching our plane in December of '03, and he launched it from a barge in the Potomac. It went 10 feet, fell in the Potomac, icy Potomac. They hauled it out, made a few changes, launched it again, 10 feet into the icy Potomac, and they gave up. Now, Mary, we found out that the Langley had spent $70,000 of Institute money on that failure. So Wilbur and I decided to kind of tally up what it cost us for our success. Mary was about $1,000. That included 4 years of train trips back and forth from Kitty Hawk. And you know, every penny of that came from our bicycle shop, not a penny from Institute money or government money. So anyway, that's one example of somebody else who tried it. So, that was number...
You lost count? That was 7.
7.
Who was 8?
Who has 8? Yes, and your name?
My name is Tina,
Tina?
and my question is for Catherine.
Catherine?
Hey, Tina, what is your question for me?
How was your success received?
How was the success, my success or my brother's success?
Your brothers.
Well, I was working at home doing things, but my brothers, there was not very much interest. There was much more interest in the airplane in France than there was in the United States. The French were rather enthusiastic, but there were some people that felt that perhaps my brothers were bluffing because there had not been any announcements or press releases from the United States regarding my brothers' flying successes. But they weren't flying in French contests to win prizes. They were testing their aircraft out over fields such as where people such as farmers and passengers on railroad and what do you call those little carriages? And even cows were wild with enthusiasm, watching Wilbur fly in control maneuvers. More people were in awe when Wilbur flew in trials at Le Mans racetrack, flying for 2 minutes around the track and flying in figure eights. More people saw Wilbur and Orville fly when, let's see, they were Le Mans racetrack, I told you about that. About 6 months, 200,000 people in France had watched my brothers fly, so they knew that they were not bluffing. Now, at home, I was trying to deal with their increased fame. I received calls and correspondence from newspapers and magazines asking me all sorts of weird questions and sometimes, frankly, some prank calls. But during this transition, I received some notices from my Oberlin friends. We became reacquainted and are doing some correspondence now. So it wasn't all for loss. So
Well, I hope you weren't corresponding with that fellow Harry Haskell who used to tutor you in math. You don't need anybody like that in your life. Besides, he's too old for you.
no, let's stop quibbling about that. He's a very nice man. I don't know why you don't like him. Besides, he's married. I'm not corresponding with him. Now let's go on to something else and stop this bickering. So what's the next question?
Is number 9.
Anybody have number 9? Yes.
Another Mary.
Mary?
And I'm wondering about a rumor. Is it true that you moved your flight testing from Kitty Hawk to Dayton?
Mary 3, huh?
Yeah, very sweet.
Well, Mary 3. Yeah, we moved to near Dayton to a place called Huffman Prairie. We got tired of the train trips, Mary, back and forth. And besides, even though the locals said those mosquitoes only were bad every 10 years, we really weren't too sure. So now, the problem is, Mary, at Huffman Prairie, the winds weren't as strong. So we developed a tower about 20 feet tall, and we had a tractor pull a large weight up, and we had a series of pulleys. And so when we dropped that weight, the weight would pull the plane down the ramp and get it airborne without as much wind. So of course, we had to build a new plane. The first one we called the Flyer had been destroyed. This was the Flyer 2, and then that flew like 25 feet in the air and flew in complete circles. Well, then our bicycle mechanic, Charlie Taylor, he built us a new engine, twice as big, 25 horsepower engine. And so we had to build a little larger aircraft, which we called the Flyer 3 for that, to handle that. And that we could fly 100 feet in the air. Now, that doesn't seem like a lot, but remember, this was just at the very beginning. Now, Wilbur wrote up his feelings about what it felt like to fly. And I'd like to read that for you because it also tells you what my thoughts were about flying. Wilbur wrote, "When you know after the first few minutes that the whole mechanism is working perfectly, the sensation is so keenly delightful as to be almost beyond description. Nobody who has not experienced it for himself can realize it. It's a realization of a dream so many persons have had of floating in the air. More than anything else, the sensation is one of perfect peace, mingled with excitement that strains every nerve to the utmost if you can conceive of such a combination." So that's, I think, Wilbur's way of expressing what we experienced. So the next question is number 10. Who has that? Yes, sir.
I'm number 10. I'm Bill.
You keep raising your hand.
Yeah, I'm Bill.
Okay.
And my question is for Mr. Wright.
Okay.
When did America get interested in your work?
Okay, thank you. Bill? You said?
Bill
All right.
from Belleville.
Bill from Belleville. Indeed, Bill from Belleville. Wants to know when America started getting interested in our work. Well, Bill, the Army asked us to build a prototype. Said they'd pay us $25,000 to build one, meeting their requirements. So we had been flying in a prone position. Our plane had one engine and two pusher-type propellers. And so run from that one engine. So what they needed was two people in a sitting position, seated positions, so that one could be an observer and map out the enemy lines and so forth. So the Flyer 3 was able to do that. So I flew a demonstration flight out at Fort Myer near Washington, D.C. Bill, about 1,000 people, celebrities and congressmen and government officials watched while I flew, and we qualified for that, 25,000. So that was really nice. Now, we stayed and did a few more demonstration flights and tried to give some of the Army people a little experience. One day I was flying with a young Army lieutenant, Lieutenant Thomas Selfridge, and unfortunately a propeller tip broke and we crashed. Now, I was injured fairly badly, broken hip, broken leg, 4 broken ribs, but obviously I survived pretty well, just a slight limp. But Lieutenant Selfridge did not survive and was killed, Bill. And so that was the first fatality in powered flight in history. And to commemorate his contributions to flight, Selfridge Air Base in this area is named after him. So that's how the government finally got interested. And again, you know, we felt so bad in 4 years of flying. We had had a few crashes, bad winds or pilot error, but never an equipment failure. That was the first equipment failure we ever had. So, all right, that was number 10. Who has number 11?
Number 11.
Yes, sir. 11, that's with two lines like that. Okay. Your name?
Larry.
Larry. Who's your question for?
I'm a little bit interested in the patent history and who did that? You were Catherine.
The patent history.
Well, you got some patents, right?
Oh, well, we had people to do that. We had lawyers.
We had people to do that.
You know, I'm not even college educated. So what was what's your question 11? Who? Yes. Oh, you have question 11. Okay.
My name's Alan.
Alan?
This is for Catherine.
Catherine. All right.
What was your reaction to Orville's crash injuries?
My reaction to his crash injuries, well, as soon as I received a telegram and stating that Orville is in critical condition but expected to survive, I immediately put in for an indefinite leave of absence from teaching, and that very same night boarded a train to the base hospital in Washington, D.C. When I saw how terrible and his injuries, how serious his injuries were, it took all the strength I had to smile and act as if nothing was wrong. But his injuries were very serious. He told me, I tried to make him laugh even, and he wouldn't do it. He said it hurt. But he told me later that he thought, well, perhaps everything was okay or I would have had a different reaction. But his injuries were quite serious, and he was in the hospital for 5 weeks before we could bring him home. Your name again? Alan. Okay, I hope that answered your question. And let's go on to the next one, which would be what?
Number 12.
Number 12? Yes. Your name?
Bob,
Bob?
and it's for whoever knows the answer.
Oh.
I thought I understood you say that the plane I saw at Smithsonian was not the original, or did I misunderstand that?
Oh, we hope it'll be there someday. This is 1925, and it is not there yet.
Okay.
But write your congressman.
Can I ask another one?
Well, we'd like to take the one that we have numbered first, and then we'll
Yes,
get to
we're
some
doing
extra
in
ones
orders,
later. maybe.
yes.
So number
What is it,
12?
12?
12.
Okay.
There, somebody popped
Oh,
up.
12, yes.
I'm
Okay.
Diane,
Diane,
and I've got a question for you, Catherine.
okay.
What did Wilbur do while Orville was recovering?
Well, he had some impressive successes. Is it Diane? you said?
Yes.
Yes. He won the Michelin Cup race in France, taking off without the use of a catapult. He also received the Aero Club de France gold medal that fortunately came with some money prizes. And so those were his major successes. Now, I tried to persuade him to return home, but instead he suggested that Father Orville and I travel to Europe. Well, I was tempted, but he also, Wilbur also suggested that I become their business and social manager, and I was tempted when he repeated the same offer with a salary. So Wilbur suggested that Father and I and Orville come to Europe, but Father turned down that opportunity, and he tried to talk me into not going as well. But I had never been outside of the United States, so I just could not say no. So Orville and I boarded an ocean liner to meet up with Wilbur in Pau, France. Now, if you haven't gathered, my brothers were very shy, did not like the limelight at all, so they put me in charge of their representative. So I took care of meeting with the press and handling those sort of things. I studied French and became rather fluent, and I met some wonderful and interesting and delightful people, even a king. Yes, I practiced very hard to perfect the proper courtesy and before meeting King Alfonso XIII. But when I met him, I forgot everything, and I just gave him a big smile and shook his hand. I learned later that he was not offended, and he thought I was quite charming. Well, I just loved Europe. It was so much fun and delightful. I never returned to teaching and became Orville and Wilbur's social and business manager. So I hope that answers your question. What is it, number, I've lost, 13? Yes.
My name is Jeff. This one's for you, Mr. Wright. Did you fly again after your crash?
Jeff wants to know if I flew again after my crash. Not right away, Jeff. But as Catherine mentioned, I did go over to Europe and watched Wilbur win all these awards, and we were finally getting some publicity back home, and people were appreciating it. But you know, Jeff, is it? Yeah. When I got to Europe, I realized that the French women really had quite a fascination with my brother Wilbur, even though he was shy. And the reason I know this is because there was a newspaper article published. A reporter interviewed a rather attractive wife of a politician and wrote up the interview with the agreement that her name would not be used. And I get a kick out of this. I thought that you might enjoy this. Here's how it went. She said her first impression was not altogether favorable, but stated, Mr. Wright appeared a bit too rough and rugged. His expression was fixed and terribly stern. But the moment he opened his lips to speak, the veil of severity vanished. His voice is warm, sympathetic, and vibrating. There's a kindly look that imparts exceptional charm and refinement to his bright, intelligent eyes. The frank, honest way in which he looks straight in the eyes of the person to whom he speaks and the firm grip of his wiry, muscular hand seemed to give true insight into his character and temperament. He impressed me as one of the most remarkable men I have ever met. Jeff, you can understand why she didn't want her name used, perhaps, in that article. Well, I did come back to the States, and by then the word of Wilbur's successes had spread, and so when our ship came into New York Harbor, the ships blew their whistles, and there was press there to interview us, and photographers. We went to Dayton, Ohio, and had a 2-day celebration, big parade. 2 weeks later, we went to Washington, D.C., where President Taft awarded us 2 medals from the Aero Club of America. It was nice to be finally recognized in our own country. Well, I did, they asked me if I flew again. I did finally fly. I went back to Fort Myer, where I'd crashed, and we had another opportunity for a contract. The Army said that if we could demonstrate that we could fly a round trip of 10 miles at 40 miles an hour average, they would let us build several aircraft. And with the Flyer 3, we did that. And so I made the trip, and we got a nice contract to build several aircraft. And we certainly appreciated having the money, and we really appreciated, the military finally appreciating us. So that's how I got flying again. That was number...
What, 15? Maybe?
That was what?
13.
13. So the next one is 14.
Oh.
Yes, sir. Your name?
Mike, my name is Mike.
Mike?
Questions for Catherine.
Catherine?
Okay.
My question, Catherine, is did your brothers ever fly together?
Your name?
Mike.
Mike, I should remember that. Mike. Did my brothers ever fly together? Yes, they did. They flew for 6 minutes after they received permission from Father, because he had made them promise that they would never fly together for obvious safety reasons. Now, Orv took our 82-year-old father up for his first and only flight. I think he enjoyed it. I could hear him yelling to Orv, higher, Orv, higher. And they reached a thrilling height of 350 feet. And now I also took my first flight while I was in France, became the third female to fly. The first one was Edith Berg, wife of one of our sales managers. And before she flew, she tied her skirts down around her ankles with rope for a modesty. Her picture was taken. It appears on magazines and newspapers, and it is rumored that was what started the hobble skirt fashion trend. Does anybody know what a hobble skirt is? Yes. Well, for those of you who do not, it's an outfit a lady would have on. Most of the time it was a big wide skirt, and they tied it at the bottom around the ankles, and looked somewhat like a balloon. Now, it could be any costume as long as the bottom edge was much smaller than anyone else. So the problem with that is it's very hard to walk. And it was, like a little shuffle, and thus the beginning of the hobble skirt. And if you're interested, when I took my flight, I also tied my skirts down with rope, because I didn't want my ankles showing, and heaven forbid my legs. So anyway, I hope that answers your question, Mike. And the next question is for
Number 15.
15.
I'm Jack, Mr. Wright, and this question is for you. I understand that you have been teaching people to fly. Can you tell us a little about that?
Yes, Jack. Yeah, we did. We had a flying school down in Alabama at a place called, later became an Army Air Base, and one in Georgia, and one in Huffman Prairie in Ohio. I understand some of you are pilots. How many of you here? Oh, don't be bashful. How many of you are pilots? Good, good. Well, the Army was very concerned about safety. You have to remember, I'm sorry, your name?
Jack.
Jack. You have to remember, Jack, this was all new. So these people who were training to fly planes had never even ridden in a plane before. So it was all very new. So they set out some safety regulations that they posted in all of the, at all the airfields. And I have a copy of those from, oh, thank you, from 1919. And I'll share some of those with you, not all of them. But remember, these sound kind of basic, particularly those of you that fly now, but remember, this was early on. Number 1, don't take the machine into the air unless you are satisfied it will fly. Number 3, don't turn sharply when taxiing. Instead of turning short, have someone lift the tail around. Number 6, pilots should carry hankies in a handy position to wipe off goggles. So you see, my scarf wasn't a fashion statement today because you get moisture and bugs and things, and you have to be able to have something to wipe off your goggles, so most of them had a nice scarf. Number 10, do not trust altitude instruments. And related to this, number 11, learn to gauge altitude, especially on landing. Number 18, if flying against the wind and you wish to turn and fly with the wind, don't make a sharp turn near the ground. You might crash. So they had to be very explicit. Number 20, don't attempt to force machines into the ground with more than flying speed. The result is bouncing and ricocheting. Hope some of you haven't experienced this. Incidentally, I'm not too good at remembering faces, but I'm sure that if those of you that are flying now, we possibly, Wilbur and I maybe taught you to fly. If we didn't, in this year 1925, why, someone that we taught you to fly. So, aviators will not wear spurs while flying. Now, again, sounds rather basic, but remember, these were Army pilots. They rode their horse out to the field to the aircraft. And they got in. They forgot to take their spurs off. It would get jammed in the mechanisms. It would cut the fabric. There would be all kinds of problems. So that was a very important reminder. Number 25, if an emergency occurs while flying, land as soon as possible. Again, it sounds rather basic, but they wanted to make sure that people understood these things. Number 26, it is advisable to carry a good pair of pliers in a position where both pilot and passenger can reach them in case of an accident. You know, a pair of pliers is going to fix it, maybe. But maybe you just have to tighten up the wire or something like that. And the final one, number 27, joyrides will not be given to civilians. So they wanted to make sure the dashing pilots didn't take some ladies up for rides and end up crashing. Oh, I was going to show you this earlier, but it was behind my poster. The first flight, powered flight, with me flying, and this is Wilbur, who had just let go of the wing, was taken by a worker there, had a camera, and they said, why don't you take a picture of one of these first flights? And it is one of the most historic photos of all time. And it's just after liftoff at Kitty Hawk with me flying and Wilbur just let go of the wing. So you may want to look at that. Maybe you've seen those. So that was number 16. Who has 17?
Wait, I have a question for you.
Who has number 17?
16.
Pardon?
Mine is 16.
16. Oh, did we skip 16?
Must have.
Oh my goodness. I'm going to have to get Harry Hoskins back here. Not.
My name is Diane.
Diane. Thank you, Diane, for correcting us.
Ohio is a very nice state. I actually live right outside of Toledo.
All right.
Mr. Wright, what became of your company?
Okay. I'm sorry, now I forgot your name. I got so excited about you correcting us. Diane. Diane wants to know what became of our company. Well, Diane, unfortunately, in 1912, Wilbur passed away from typhoid fever. I had survived it earlier in life, but Catherine and I were crushed. And so we kept the company for a couple of years, and then we sold it. And then it was bought by a fellow named Wright, named no, not Martin. Glenn. There are two Glens. I keep getting mixed up. Yes, Glenn Martin. Glenn Martin bought it. And he called it the Wright Martin Company, and he kept it for a while, and then he sold it. So then the name reverted back to Wright Aeronautical Company, which it is called today in 1925. Now this fellow Glenn Martin was an interesting guy. He went out west and built his own aircraft company, and he taught a fellow named Bill Boeing to fly. Now you might have heard of him. He was making planes for the Navy, but the only way that you can make money in commercial aviation these days is to carry mail contracts to speed up the mail delivery across the country. And so he was doing that. Well, he started to think, I think there's a better future in aircraft than just mail delivery. So he took out part of the mail storage area, and he put in some seats to hold 4 passengers and put in a side door. And so he started commercial aircraft industry. So some of you that haven't flown, if you ever get to fly in one of these contraptions, you can thank Bill Boeing for starting the commercial aircraft industry. That was number 16. Now we're looking for 17.
Right here. My name's Karen.
Karen?
And this is a question for Catherine.
Catherine, okay.
Karen, what's your question for me?
What are you and Orville doing?
Oh, what is Orville and I doing now? Well, I was involved with women's marches in Dayton, Ohio. I even persuaded Orville to walk in some of our marches. And now, although Southbridge, we have the vote now, there's other issues that we need to address. I also became the officer of the Wright Company after Wilbur died. I belong to the Oberlin Association and Oberlin College. Let's see, what else? I don't think I have to do anything else. But, hopefully that answers your question. Did I say I became an officer of the Wright Company? Yeah. So Orville, do you want to add anything to this?
Well, that was our last question.
Oh yes, I was supposed to tell you what you did.
Oh, okay.
So sometimes you don't remember, right? Well, Orville is somewhat of an elderly spokesman for the aviation.
Elder spokesman.
Spokesman for the aviation industry, and he also belongs to many aviation boards and committees, so that keeps him rather busy. So thank you for the question, and I believe that is it, isn't it? So would you like to add anything?
Well, we'd like to thank you for your interest in our invention of powered flight and learning about us and our family, and we're very pleased that you're here tonight, and hope you enjoyed it. Had some fun. Well, we're not done yet. I'm going to step out of character now, and I'm not Orville Wright, and you know that, but I hope for a while that you felt I was Orville Wright, and that Nancy was Catherine. At Doré Productions, we like to bring these historical figures to life for you and have some fun doing it. So we started doing things, started up this Doré Productions about 30 years ago. We did murder mysteries at Genetti's restaurant for many years. Then we went on the dinner train. We did murder mysteries there. You might have seen this, I don't know. And then we got involved in the historical things at the Botsford Inn, and we've been doing pretty much the historical presentations ever since. My real name is Russ Doré. I live in Northville. Northville has an interesting aviation history. One of the fellows trained by the Wrights was trained by Glenn Martin, actually, was Eddie Stinson. He became an Army training pilot and then formed the Stinson Aircraft Company in Northville. It grew and it moved down to what's now Metro Airport. And it was bought by E.L. Cord of Cord Automotive. And he started an airline. And he bought the planes from his own Stinson Aircraft Company. And that airline later became American Airlines. And then one of the designs of Eddie's went on to become the basis for the Piper Cub, which is one of the leading private aircraft. So little Eddie Stinson from Northville had quite an impact on the aviation industry. Also, there were some movies made here about 5 years ago or so, 6 years ago now, when they had subsidies from the state. And then the subsidy stopped and the movie companies went to Georgia and other places. There was a group trying to get the subsidies back, and I think, I hope so, I think it was really good for the area. But anyway, I had the opportunity to become a background actor in half a dozen films, and one related to aircraft, and that was called Up in the Air with George Clooney. And that was filmed at Metro. If you look at the back of the DVD, there's a picture of George. If you look over his left shoulder, there's my picture. I have a very unique hat, so I know it's me. That was a lot of fun. Then I continued my interest in aviation. During COVID, I decided to write a couple of books, and I wrote one on a historical novel about the start of the automotive industry with Henry Ford, Billy Durant, and Walter Chrysler. But my second book was called They Put America in the Air. I had worked for Boeing for a few years, and so this book is about the Wright brothers, Bill Boeing and Donald Douglas, and others who started the commercial aircraft industry. And it's historical fiction, so I actually took real history and then sort of made up the conversation. So I have a conversation between Wilbur and Orville when they were flipping the coin to see who went first. I made up a conversation between Bill Boeing and his partner when he decided to build his own airplane rather than repair one that he had bought from Glenn Martin. So a lot of fun. I do have a few copies with me always. I'd be glad to sign them, make a good Father's Day gift or birthday gift. It's not a bad read for $10, and you can save the tax and the shipping. Anyway, and I have some cards here too if you want to order one from Amazon later. I'd be glad to give you a card. So anyway, one other thing I'd like to mention is I'm on the board of the Motor Cities National Heritage Area, which is an organization that part of the National Park Service. We are the only heritage area out of 60 in the country that focuses on automobiles, and we run from here up to Flint and over to the Gilmore Museum over in Western Michigan. And maybe you've seen the big signs. You are now on the highway. You are now entering the Motor Cities National Heritage Area. If you haven't, quit reading your phone while you're driving, because they're pretty prominent. But anyway, we get most of our money from the National Park Service, but we have to earn a certain amount locally. So it's $20 to join for seniors. I think there are a few of you here, and $30 for real people. And obviously, I'm in I'm not the real people group. So I've got some flyers here I'll put out too on that, and I would like you to consider that because it's a really good organization to support. And the Yankee Air Museum is a member, a partner in Motor Cities, and by becoming a member, you get discounts in gift stores, and you get discounts on entrance fees, and you support history. So at this point, I'd like to fill you in on what happened to Orville after 1925. The Wright name is still current in aviation. The Curtiss Wright Company following a merger with a company founded by Glenn Curtis. He was a bicycle mechanic in New York and became a champion motorcycle racer. He invented the aileron, which gave better control than the wing warp used by the Wright brothers and all aircraft manufacturers, including the Wright brothers eventually adopted ailerons in their wing designs. His Curtis Airplane and Motor Company eventually merged with the Wright Company in 1929 to form the Curtis Wright Company. It was the largest military aircraft company during World War II. Made 14,000 P-40 fighters, the one used by the famous Flying Tiger Squadron. The company currently is a $2 billion diversified corporation. Now, Orville made his last flight as a pilot in 1918. He was a board member of the National Advisory Committee for Aeronautics, predecessor to NASA, for 28 years. In 1930, he received the very first Guggenheim Medal, and in 1936 was elected a member of the National Academy of Sciences. Pretty good for a guy who never went to college. In 1938, their bicycle shop was moved to Greenfield Village. Now, that is an authentic Wright Brothers bicycle shop. If you go to Dayton, there are two more authentic Wright bicycle shops. But they grew and they moved, okay? So they are all authentic. And so ours at Greenfield Village, the one you've been to, I'm sure, is a real one. Moved here by Henry Ford. Orville took his last airplane ride in 1944 in a Lockheed Constellation, piloted by Howard Hughes. He commented that the wingspan of the Constellation was longer than his first flight. Orville died in 1948 at age 76 of a heart attack. His total wealth was over $1 million, or in today's dollars, over $10 million. He had lived to see aviation develop from his 12 horsepower engine to jet planes. So now I'll let Nancy introduce herself and tell you about Catherine after 1925.
Hi, everyone. We often are asked if we are married, and the answer is yes. Yes, we are, but not to each other. But we have been acting partners for over 30 years, having met in a community theater production of You Can't Take It With You, and the rest, of course, is history. He started off with, the guys in the Ford Motor Company. I finally persuaded him to add a female role to one of these, and we do numbers of those whenever we're asked. My acting career actually began in Hollywood when I lived in Los Angeles at the age of 14. I was asked by an agent if I wanted to be an actress, and I did commercials and TV shots. I worked with Rock Hudson and Shelley Fabre. I was in 3 what they call guest stars, just the one-time part for there on 3 different TV shows and half a dozen commercials. And then came college and traveling the world and ending up in Michigan. And I signed up with some local agents there and did, I've done numerous commercials and industrial films. Those are training films for various industries. I think that's enough about me. Yeah, Russ and I have been doing these various presentations. We have a lot of the presidents and their wives, along with Thomas Edison and other interesting people. So it's grown from our very first beginning.
You're going to tell them about
what? Oh, yes. Okay, I have to talk about her. Catherine was only the second female to be elected to the Board of Trustees of Oberlin College and worked for equal pay for women faculty members. She was a member of Oberlin's teaching organization who met monthly to read plays. She was the first woman to attend a monthly banquet of the Aero Club de France and one of the few women awarded the French Legion of Honor along with her brothers. She renewed her correspondence with Harry Haskell, a friend and tutor from Oberlin. After his wife died, they wrote frequently and met several times without Orville's knowledge. After devoting most of her life to her brother's passion of conquering a flight, she had finally found love and life for herself. 1926, they married and moved to Kansas City, where he became one of the principal owners of Kansas City Star newspaper. Harry's adult son was very pleased with the marriage, but Orville was not. He did not attend the wedding, nor did he ever speak to her again because of the marriage. Harry and Catherine were planning a trip to Europe in 1929, but she caught a cold and it turned into pneumonia. She died March 1929 at age 54. She was married to Harry for just 2 years and 3 months. Orville finally came to see her the day before she died. He donated $300,000 to Oberlin, equal to millions today. The college used it to build the Wright Laboratory of Physics. Harry presented Oberlin College with a marble fountain in front of the art building, an exact copy of the fountain in Florence, Italy. Harry felt they might have seen it had they been able to make their trip to Italy. It bears the inscription to Catherine Wright Haskell, 1974 to 1929. Now, some people felt her brothers would not have been so successful without her social charm. That's up to you to decide. Yes or no. So thank you for your attention. I hope you enjoyed the performance. And if you have any questions or pictures that you wanted to take, so now's the time.
Great, well, thank you so much. We appreciate your time and your interest and your knowledge. Just a couple of housekeeping things, and then you can, if you have other questions or want to take photos, you can do that. We have great programs like this the first Wednesday of every month. Our next one will be April 5th, 7:30. Mr. Michael Unsworth will present a program on President Gerald Ford's World War II experiences in the Navy. Should be an interesting one as well. Please remember the donation boxes back here and out in the hallway. Your support truly goes a long way to help us have these programs every month. Thank you, Becca, for putting together another phenomenal job. Thank you all for coming out tonight. And until April 5th, bye-bye and bye-bonds. See ya.